Before the Fellowship was the greatest story you've never heard. I'm Cameron. And who are you?
I'm Dan.
I think
I
we're
wonder
doing
who this third guy is.
I'm Greg.
Join us as we read and react to the Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien. Last week we heard about finally met the last of the lords and the queens of the Valar, and we're about to learn who the Maiar are. With the Valar came other spirits, whose being also began before the world, of the same order as the Valar, but of less degree. These are the Maiar, the people of the Valar, and their servants and helpers. Their number is not known to the elves, and few have names in any of the tongues of the children of Ilúvatar. For though it is otherwise in Aman, in Middle-earth the Maiar have seldom appeared in form visible to elves and men. Chief among the Maiar of Valinor, whose names are remembered in the histories of the elder days, are Ilmare, the handmaid of Varda, and Eonwe, the banner-bearer and herald of Manwë, whose might in arms is surpassed by none in Arda. But of all the Maiar, Ose and Uinen are best known to the children of Ilúvatar. Ose is a vassal of Ulmo, and he is master of the seas that wash the shores of Middle-earth. He does not go in the deeps, but loves the coasts and the isles, and rejoices in the winds of Manwë. For in storm he delights, and laughs amid the roaring of the waves. His spouse is Uinen, the lady of the seas, whose hair lies spread through all waters under sky. All creatures she loves that live in the salt streams, and all weeds that grow there. To her mariners cry, for she can lay calm upon the waves, restraining the wildness of Ose. The Númenóreans lived long in her protection, and held her in reverence equal to the Valar. Melkor hated the sea, for he could not subdue it. It is said that in the making of Arda, he endeavored to draw Ose to his allegiance, promising to him all the realm and power of Ulmo if he would serve him. So it was that long ago there arose great tumults in the sea that wrought ruin in the lands. But Uinen and the prayer of Aule restrained Ose and brought him before Ulmo. And he was pardoned and returned to his allegiance, to which he has remained faithful. For the most part, for the delight in violence has never wholly departed from him, and at times he will rage in his willfulness without any command from Ulmo his lord. Therefore, those who dwell by the sea or go up in ships may love him, but they do not trust him. Melian was the name of a Maya who served both Vana and Este. She dwelt long in Lórien, tending the trees that flower in the gardens of Irmo, ere she came to Middle-earth. Nightingales sang about her wherever she went. Wisest of the Maiar was Olórin. He too dwelt in Lórien, but his ways took him often to the house of Nienna, and of her he learned pity and patience. Of Melian much is told in the Quenta Silmarillion, but of Olórin that tale does not speak. For though he loved the elves, he walked among them unseen, for in form as one of them, and they did not know whence came the fair visions or the promptings of wisdom that he put into their hearts. In later days he was the friend of all the children of Ilúvatar, and took pity on their sorrows, and those who listened to him awoke from despair and put away the imaginations of darkness. Of the enemies. Last of all is set the name of Melkor, he who arises in might. But that name he has forfeited, and the Noldor, who among the elves suffered most from his malice, will not utter it. And they name him Morgoth, the dark enemy of the world. Great might was given to him by Ilúvatar, and he was coeval with Manwë. In the powers and knowledge of all the other Valar he had part, but he turned them to evil purposes and squandered his strength in violence and tyranny. For he coveted Arda and all that was in it, desiring the kingship of Manwë and dominion over the realms of his peers. From splendor he fell through arrogance to contempt for all things save himself, a spirit wasteful and pitiless. Understanding he turned to subtlety in perverting to his own will all that he would use, until he became a liar without shame. He began with a desire of light, but when he could not possess it for himself alone, he descended through fire and wrath into a great burning, down into darkness. And darkness he used most in his evil works upon Arda, and filled it with fear for all living things. Yet so great was the power of his uprising that in ages forgotten he contended with Manwë and all the Valar, and through long years in Arda held dominion over most of the lands of the earth. But he was not alone. For of the Maiar, many were drawn to his splendor in the days of his greatness, and remained in that allegiance down into his darkness. And others he corrupted afterwards to his service with lies and treacherous gifts. Dreadful among these spirits were the Valarakar, the scourges of fire that in Middle-earth were called the Balrogs, demons of terror. Among those of his servants that have names, the greatest spirit whom the Eldar called Sauron, or Gorthar the Cruel. In his beginning he was of the Maiar of Aule, and he remained mighty in the lore of that people. In all the deeds of Melkor, the Morgoth upon Arda, in his vast works and in the deceits of his cunning, Sauron had a part, and was only less evil than his master, in that for long he served another and not himself. But in after years he rose like a shadow of Morgoth and a ghost of his malice, and walked behind him on the same ruinous path down into the void. Here ends the Valaquenta. So, my question is, does anyone identify with Melkor? He's not is he a sympathetic character? I love how evil is in Tolkien's writings. It's so well described.
Yeah. I mean it's purely satanic, right? It's he is the Satan of this world. And I think even in not just Christianity, but in other religions, you have this sort of mythical character that represents a form of evil. In this and in Christianity, it's personified in a being that is started off beautiful and ended up like beyond ugly, like went to ugly and then crossed the line.
He was trying to get the light, the light which was beyond him. But what I think his downfall was the pride he had to have dominion over everything. So it's interesting that the Valar have dominion over certain things, and they have limitations. So like last week, it made me laugh because I think it was Tulkas who like only thinks about today. and like he doesn't think about yesterday or tomorrow, and he's not a counselor.
Right.
He's like a fighter. He's running around faster than anything. Like his weapons are his hands. So these Valar have limitations, and they're limited to their dominion, what they have lordship over. But Melkor or Morgoth wanted everything. He wanted to have dominion over everything.
Yeah, let's address that one line that you read out that might sound confusing if you're not reading along. Great might was given to him, that's Morgoth, by Ilúvatar, and he was co-eval with
Co-eval.
Manwë.
Yeah, how do you say that?
I don't know how it's said, but it sounded like you're saying co-evil. Like they Manwë is actually secretly evil. Plot twist. No.
Plot twist at the beginning of the story.
Yeah, they'll be like, wait, I thought he was good. Oh, I guess he's evil. No, it just means that like they have the same age. They're contemporaries. They're
brothers in might.
Yeah, they're brothers in might. They were conceived in the same era, and
have
they're
the
co-equivalent
same sort of power.
Yeah, and yeah. So just to clear that up right out the bat,
I'm glad you did that.
Just in case it's confusing.
Isn't it cool that we met Sauron?
Yeah,
like,
that was so cool.
Balrogs. It's like, okay. So I love telling people that like, okay, the big bad of Lord of the Rings, there's a bigger and a badder in the Silmarillion. And that was such a good hook for me. It's like Sauron is just a lieutenant of Morgoth.
I think I forget that very often and think that they're the same person, that they are both the big evil. And in a way they are, but they're different big evils. Like Morgoth is the ultimate and Sauron is just a minion.
And I love this line that Sauron wasn't as evil because of one thing, that he served another except for himself. So Sauron's serving Morgoth.
Oh, what a good guy.
Okay, there's one little
he's just a guy trying to make it in the world, you know.
If there's one redeeming quality of Sauron, it's that he served another. He was underneath another, but Morgoth was just always for himself since the beginning. Okay,
so the Maiar and the Maiar.
I think the word you said is helpful, Cameron, just now, is helpful in understanding what and who they are. They're kind of like the lieutenants of the Valar, right? They're second in command to them. And what I find really interesting in their description in this reading is they kind of share these characteristics, right? They're part of their Valar's dominion in a certain sense. So the two big ones that it mentioned are Osa and Uinen, who both are vassals of Ulmo. So they kind of have this connection with the sea too, right?
I love that word, vassal. I don't know why. It's just cool.
And it was interesting to see how they capture even more specific elements of their Valar's dominion. So, but I really like how it described them. It's particularly Osa was the one who he's the one, right, that was tempted by by Melkor and kind of left the service of Ulmo for a time, and he was
wait, where's that? Sorry, how did I miss that bit? Did we?
It's like halfway through the Maiar section.
Wait,
right.
What?
So he failed in his allegiance and served Melkor for a time, but he was brought back to proper allegiance. And I thought that this was a pretty interesting thing about him. It mentioned that after he returned, he remained faithful to Ulmo for the most part, but the delight in violence has never wholly departed from him. And that's why there's raging storms on the sea and things. It's this violence that still is within him.
And if Melkor can control the sea, like this thing that he can't control, then like it makes sense that you try to manipulate or go after Osei, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Here's an interesting line about Osei is that he went away, tempted by Melkor, but Uinen who was his spouse, at the prayer of Aule, so one of the Valar, restrained Ose and brought him back before Ulmo. So yeah, you do get this kind of chain of command, and I love that it's the spouse who restrains him and brings him
That's
back.
beautiful. Okay, wait. Help me understand this. Do I understand correctly that Ose basically has command of the sea through his, he's a vassal.
master of the seas that wash the shores of Middle Earth. So think of like the surface of the sea is how I view him, like the storms that rage on the sea and like the shores.
So he has that, but Melkor can't control it, right? He can't subdue it, it says.
Yeah.
But Ose, to a certain extent, has authority over at least part of it, right?
It's like Ulmo has authority over the sea, and Ose is one of his lieutenants.
Yeah, so one part of the sea.
Yeah.
But the beauty of it is just that Melkor hates the sea because he can't subdue it. He tries to subdue Ose. He can't subdue Ose. But guess what? Ose's spouse, right? It's Ose's spouse that can subdue Ose.
Yeah, right.
It's like an insult to Melkor's power even more.
Right.
And also just that theme of sea, right? In humanity, like it's always been a symbol of chaos, right? It's a chaotic element. And it's kind of, it shows the limit of Melkor because even he does not have control over chaos. And he can't command chaos, and that's probably why he's pissed off by it. He can add to the chaos, but he can't command it. And so even now, we're seeing multiple limitations to his power. Can't control the sea, chaos. He can't control, and that comes out in Lord of the Rings, obviously, when the ring is destroyed, and obviously Melkor would like Sauron to get hold of it.
Spoiler alert. Sorry.
Spoiler alert.
Sorry, guys.
He can't control chaotic elements. He can't control the Maiar or the Valar, and he can't control even other people influencing the Maiar, which is, we're seeing a big limitation to his power. So he's not all that. He's not.
That's right.
That cool.
He's kind of cool.
It seems like it's
sort of cool
because he does.
He's like a cool, dark, moody kind of like
teenager.
Yeah.
Teenager, yeah. I mean, well, he does have influence on the
eyelashes.
Maiar, right? Because some of he has his own that have followed him into darkness, but even then, it seems that it's incomplete. His power is definitely incomplete.
It's interesting. He promised him all the realm and power of Ulmo, so he's trying to get dominion over everything, and it seems like an empty promise.
Yeah.
It reminds me of when Satan tempted Christ, saying, like, I'll give you everything the light touches. Different mood. But actually, I don't know. It seemed like an empty promise that he would be able to give him the realm of Ulmo. Or maybe Melkor was also planning on turning Ulmo.
Okay, so Maiar are these sort of vassals of the Aina, right? No, it's not Aina, the Valar, right? And I think we find this out in this book, right? Gandalf is actually of the division of the Maiar.
Yep, I think it's towards the end of the book.
Oh, okay, cool.
But he is part of this chapter. He is Olórin, right?
Oh, I thought he was
That's awesome.
Mithrandir. I mean, he is Mithrandir, but
he is Mithrandir.
Also,
That's another name. Those are all names, yes.
Okay.
So he's actually touched. I mean, this is about as much as he's talked about in the Silmarillion until very close to the end. But I wanted to bring that up. I highlighted a little bit here, but I think there are a couple. Knowing that that's who it is, if you hopefully your mind is just blown if you didn't know. But now looking at it, you can kind of pull some things out from what you know about him. His ways took him off into the house of Nienna, who we just heard last episode. She's the one who knows grief and mourning and
dwells in the halls of Mandos.
She gives endurance and hope, and she helps people's sorrow be transformed into wisdom. And so of her, he learned pity and patience. And that is so much of who he is in The Lord of the Rings.
That's so cool.
He's like a student of her. and he's able to share that compassion. But also, I love what it says here in kind of this last section about him. Those who listened to him awoke from despair and put away the imaginations of darkness.
Dang.
And one of the things that prompted me to read the Silmarillion for the first time was a footnote in my copy of The Lord of the Rings, where it explained a bit about Gandalf's history, but he actually possessed one of the elven rings of fire. And I love that contrast of Gandalf. He wields this fire. It just mentioned in here that Morgoth, his desire for light led him down into fire and burning and into darkness eventually. But the fire that Gandalf wields is kind of like the good side of fire as we understand it. It provides warmth and light, and it can be, it can cast out darkness. And that's kind of who he is. Those who listen to him
so many
from
moments
despair.
sorry, Greg.
No,
Greg,
go ahead.
There's so many moments in Lord of the Rings. I think of Gandalf, casting out despair and darkness and inspiring hope.
Yes.
In the Fellowship or the Hobbits. And my favorite moment of and this is in the film. I don't know if it's in the book, but it's when Gandalf and Pippin are behind that closed door and the trolls getting in at Minas Tirith.
Oh yeah.
And it's like the end of all hope. And Pippin is just like facing death for the first time. And you could say despairing. He says, is this the end? And then Gandalf says, the end? Death is a path we must all take. And he describes the shores, beyond the sea, which is flipping what we're reading about right now. Like the shores beyond where the swift sunrise and, I forget what else he says, but it also has the theme of Into the West playing again in the background. It just moves me to tears whenever I see that. And it's Gandalf who's learned from Nienna pity and patience and how to be with people in their sorrow, but say, hey, that's not the end. Like, let me tell you about these shores I've seen. It's so cool.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you said that, Greg, about him being Olórin. I just would not have got that. Like it says he's wisest of the Maiar, right? And that he loved the elves but walked among them unseen. Is he in spirit? Is Olórin this like spirit form of him?
Yeah, all the Maiar are spirits who take on a form.
So he becomes not incarnate, maybe incarnate, or at least he presents himself as a physical form. So he walked among them unseen, or in form as one of them. Does that mean he looked like Gandalf, or he actually looked like, I guess, a fair-skinned, non-bearded, like, man?
Well, I think, it mentions in The Lord of the Rings, I think, a few times that he just appeared to be an old man, and often was just confused for, and I think Saruman as well. They were just seen as an old man standing there,
That's true.
And I think even part of how they're depicted in the films is a little bit based on a painting of Odin, like the Norse god, in like a human form as like an old man, or something like that. I may be making that up, but you can look into that later.
Speaking of Saruman, he's a Maiar as well, and the Balrog. So when Gandalf faces down the Balrog, in the Mines of Moria, it's a Maiar versus a Maiar, and that's just so cool to think about. Even this old man standing toe to toe with this Balrog.
That's awesome.
So cool.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
But just to be clear, like Olórin right now is spirit form, and he takes the form of an elf, not an old man, but an elf at times, but otherwise just like has.
Well, Children of Ilúvatar refers to men and elves.
Well, no, he says, look, because before. Oh, it does, because he said, for though he loved the elves, he walked among them unseen, or in form as one of them, and they did not know whence he came.
Interesting.
Like,
yeah, he must have. I mean, we know him as Gandalf in the Third Age, right? But he must have just come and gone at different times, right? And appeared however he wished at to serve his purpose at that time. And I know we're running a little bit long, but that's an interesting point too, that he like stoked the flames of courage in the hearts of people as a peer, or as not as this powerful being coming before them, but he just met them as their own, and maybe a little bit mysterious, but that's kind of how he.
Well, even the hobbits just view him as a crazy old fool.
Yeah,
right? Like,
right.
Like a magician that like sets off fireworks and causes trouble. Like, but not with any kind of reverence. They don't give him any reverence, but the evil people do. Like, whenever they see him, they like shit their pants. I'm not sure I could say that on this podcast, but they do.
Cameron's gonna have to get the bleep button.
I was thinking of what our bleep button could say. Like maybe it says a word on it.
Maybe there's an elven word we can.
Yeah, while you look that up, I'll wrap us out. If you like what you hear, please give us those 3 Silmarils out of 3. 3 out of 3, 100%, which is all. It translates to 5 stars for those of you who don't know the math. This joke about 3 Silmarils is going to be really funny when we get to that part of the book. So go ahead and rate us 3 out of 3. Follow us everywhere at Before the Fellowship, and send any comments or questions to beforethefellowship@gmail.com. Join us next week as we continue to read the greatest story you've never heard, The Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien.